Have you ever wondered what your life would be like if you tried something else? Have you ever had trouble sticking to the same thing for a long period of time? If so, you might want to listen to this video. Welcome to the Multi-Loving Model, the channel that shows you how to handle multiple interests, multiple partners, and multiple approaches to finance. My name is Gerald, and I help people to figure out their way through life, love, and learning in order to customize their path to happiness. If this is your first time on this channel, welcome. And if you've been around before, thank you so much for dropping by, and I hope this video will be of use to you. Today is Multi-Mission Monday, and what we're going to do today is to find out, are you a multi-potentialite? Now, in general, there are three kinds of multi-potentialites. Now, first and foremost, we need to separate between what is a multi-potentialite and what is a specialist. First and foremost, a specialist is somebody who has one point of interest and keeps working on that for a really long time. We're talking maybe half their life, and then perhaps they have a career switch, something like that. So a person is able to dedicate to something for an extreme period of time, attain mastery, and continue on with that mastery. Multipotentialites, on the other hand, come in different forms. So in general, I'm going to talk about three forms. The first one is you have specialization. So these people are interested in mastery, and they proceed down the track of mastery all the way until they master a subject, and then they jump to something else and master that other thing. So for these particular kinds of people, for these particular kinds of multipotentialites, they don't particularly care to continue the mastery process, which makes them different from a specialist. So the specialist will continue on the path that they have already mastered, but for the mastery multipotentialite, they reach mastery, they've achieved their heights, they've got all their goals, they've hit all their targets, they move on to something else, and they start a complete new life. So it's kind of like having a midlife crisis every time you hit mastery. The second kind of multipotentialite is the interest multipotentialite. So for the interest multipotentialite, generally speaking, they're interested in multiple topics, few topics, but these topics are consistent. So for example, I am an interest multipotentialite, which means that I have a few areas of interest that I talk about. So this channel itself, the multi-loving model, is a way for me to integrate some of my passions together. Now, that's not to say that that's all I have. I have a few other ones as well. So there's things like the martial arts, there's things about ethics and philosophy and psychology, stuff like that. So those are things that I may cover inside this channel as part of either learning or love or finance. So the main thing for the interest multipotentialite is that they have a cluster of interests that they have, and they keep jumping from topic to topic. So for these particular people, they do not necessarily care about mastery per se. They would like to get mastery, but it is not necessary for them. The mastery multipotentialite wants to attain mastery and then move on. The interest multipotentialite wants to explore their interests. So they are more exploratory in nature. So the interest multipotentialite has multiple interests, and they bounce around from topic to topic. So the last kind of multipotentialite is the discovery multipotentialite. Now this discovery multipotentialite actually is interested in so many things, and in fact they are so into discovery that they don't necessarily have a fixed interest base. So unlike the interest multipotentialite, who likes to explore their own thing, right? So they explore their own topics and they seek to become a master of all of them kind of at the same time. The discovery multipotentialite just likes to learn a bit of everything in a sense. So for these particular people, what they care most about is that they are constantly learning something new in everything. Today they'll be learning a little bit of pottery, another day they'll be learning about electrician work, and another day they'll be learning how to do ice skating, they'll learn how to do mountain climbing, they'll be interested in how to follow a project, and then suddenly they'll jump into opera, and then suddenly they'll jump into some other musical instrument, and then they suddenly do some reading onto heavy philosophy, and then into Greek culture, and then something else. So they will keep exploring and finding out new things about different kinds of interests for them. Whatever catches your fancy is what they will be exploring. So now that that's said, how does this impact you? First and foremost, you have to identify, are you a specialist or are you a multipotentialite? And if you are a multipotentialite, what kind of multipotentialite are you? Now, for that second question, I will address it in how to tell what your engine is, or basically what drives you as a multipotentialite. Today, I am just going to focus on whether you're a multipotentialite or whether you're a specialist. So the main distinction for me is this. A specialist is somebody who attains mastery and then continues to stay in their mastery. So that is something that you have to take note of, right? So a specialist is someone who's attained a mastery and continues to profit off that, and they keep working on it and they're not tired of it, they're not bored of it per se, right? They attain their mastery and then just continue staying there or pushing the boundary a little bit at a time, right? So think of it like you've achieved your PhD, but you still continue to research that field in which you study. Now, when we talk about multipotentialites, we have the three different topics, right? So the first one is if you are unable to attain mastery. That's the simplest one. If you are unable to attain mastery for whatever reason, generally speaking, you are possibly one of the other two kinds of multipotentialites. Either you're the discovery multipotentialite or you're the interest multipotentialite. If, on the other hand, you attain mastery, but you find it difficult to stay in that mastery. So, for example, if you've attained your PhD, that's the equivalent, right? You've attained your PhD, and then you're no longer interested in that field. You want to jump to something else. That could mean that you are a mastery multipotentialite. And I know this is going to sound weird, but here's another analogy, right? So think of a specialist like a person who loves one woman and sticks with her for the rest of his life, right? Unless barring something unfortunate happening, he's going to stay with her for his whole life. That is kind of like what a specialist does. A mastery multipotentialite, on the other hand, is like a person who marries somebody and then after a while divorces and then moves on. So in a sense, they marry a spouse and then after a while, after they are tired of that spouse, they dump that spouse and they move on to another one. So in a sense, they are like serial monogamists. I'm not really going to be talking much about relationship structures today, but I'm just saying there is an interesting parallel here which does not necessarily apply. So just because you are a specialist does not necessarily mean that you are so in your relationship. Just because you are a multipotentialite does not mean that you are a polyamorist. The equivalent for the interest multipotentialite is they have multiple partners at a time. So perhaps they have 4 partners at a time and all of them are equally important to them. And they are willing to stick it out. They are willing to reach that kind of mastery level with all of them. The last one, the discovery multipotentialite, would be the kind of person who's just completely unable to settle down with any one person. They will jump from person to person, they'll have a fling here, they'll have a fling there, they might have a one-night stand here and a small little casual thing over there, and then they might have a small little relationship over there and things like that, but they never really settle down with any one particular person in general. So how do you tell? How do you tell whether you are a specialist or a multipotentialite? The primary thing that I use to distinguish whether you're a specialist or a multipotentialite is to list everything down. So when I say list everything down, I want you to put down on a piece of paper all your interests, right? The things that you're interested in, the things that you've tried out before, the things that you have ever been interested in, right? So I want you to list them down, and I want you to figure out, have you attained mastery in any of them? That's the first thing. The second question you should ask yourself is, do you want to achieve mastery in any of them? Or basically, do you want to get good at any number of them? So if you look at it and you notice that you have multiple things, multiple interests that you want to be a master of, it could indicate you are a multipotentialite. Now, the main thing to take note of here is that when you're doing this exercise, you have to keep in mind that mastery is a painful process. So what do I mean by that? So for example, are you willing to spend 10 years of your life dedicated to this one singular interest first? Right? So if, for example, you've marked off, say, scuba diving and accountancy and flying an airplane, you want to master all 3 things. Do you really want to master all 3 things? That's the second question. Do you actually want to master all these three things? Keeping in mind that you may very well be spending up to 10 years in any singular field. Right? You can do them all together. That's separate. That's a whole different story. But if you want to master multiple interests, it probably indicates that you are more likely than not a multipotentialite. And then the last criteria is, if you master this, if you've reached a level where you feel that you will not be able to learn anything else, that you've pretty much seen it all, that you've mastered that level, are you going to get bored? More specifically, are you going to get bored enough that you want to leave? And now I want you to reflect back in your own life. Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever attained mastery, so to speak, of a certain subject, of a certain skill, and then you just decided, you know what? I'm done learning this skill. I want to move on to something else. Or has your experience been more of, I've mastered something, I want to keep doing it because it feels good to keep doing it, to do something that I'm good at. So that's something to think about, right? So if you've mastered something and it feels good to do it, and you keep doing it, then most likely you're a specialist. Or you could also be an interest multipotentialite, because if you have multiple interests and you are willing to do that, that is one thing to think about. The second element is whether or not you have even multiple interests that you are interested in, interested to master at all. So now that I think about it, actually, you can kind of break it down into two different components. So the first component actually is specialization. So not specialization, it's mastery. So are you interested in attaining mastery at all? So that's the first criteria, right? Are you interested in attaining mastery? And the second one is, how do you want to explore it? Are you interested in exploring at all? Or do you want to do it sequentially? Or do you want to do it all at once? And I'm probably not going to be able to put that here, but I will try my best. So the first category that you have is the specialist. So the specialist is somebody who wants to master something, it feels good to master something, and is not interested to explore. That's the specialist. So the second category is the mastery multipotentialite, in which they want to achieve mastery, but they only want to do that one at a time, in sequence. The third kind is the interest multipotentialite, in which they want to attain mastery, but they want to do it all at the same time. And the last one is the discovery multipotentialite, in which they're not interested to attain mastery, and they want to explore it all at the same time. So looking back on your own interests, which category do you fall under? Let me know in the comment sections below. Which one are you, and what's your life been like? Because that is interesting. Every quadrant has a different story, a different kind of lifestyle, different kinds of challenges, and of course, we'll be talking about it all here on the Multi-Loving Model. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. How did you like it? Has this been useful to you? Has this actually helped you in any way? If it has, please do give me a like. It helps out the channel. And if you're interested in more content about how to handle multiple interests, multiple relationships, and multiple approaches to finance, consider subscribing to the channel. And then if you want, you can also hit the notification bell. My name is Gerald, and this is Multi-Loving Model. Be happy in diversity. Cheers.